What if I told you Midway was at one point working on a spiritual successor to the wildly popular NBA Jam arcade game, but taking the same over-the-top arcade wackiness and applying it to Major League Baseball? Well, that's exactly what they were trying to do in the mid-90s with MLB Power-Up Baseball. This was a joint effort between Midway and Incredible Technologies, whom you might recognize from some of the Golden Tee arcade games. MLB Power-Up Baseball had a full Major League Baseball license, utilized the same digitization techniques as NBA Jam, and even had their own zany announcer, Hawk Harrelson. Hawk was a longtime player for the Chicago White Sox, as well as their play-by-play announcer for over 30 years, and back in the 70s he was the Hamburglar for a time. This game was initially in development as late as 1996, and there were even some test cabinets put together and placed in a few local Chicago arcades just to see how the game would perform. And then, just as quietly as it came, MLB Power-Up Baseball was canceled and never really mentioned again. That is until a functional image of the game's code was found on a burned CDR in the basement of the late Chris Oberg, one of the programmers that worked on the game. And thanks to the wonderful folks at the Video Game History Foundation, this has all been compiled into a functional set of ROM files that you can try for yourself at home, on one of those programs that you use to play arcade games without. Now, to be fair, the Video Game History Foundation points out that it's not really known where at in the development cycle this particular version of the game was taken from. Although test cabinets had gone out, they were still tweaking the code. But what we see here is essentially playable. Well, sorta. Okay, so like I mentioned before, this game was done by Incredible Technologies, and just like with the Golden Tee games, they tried to incorporate the trackball into MLB Power-Up Baseball. The end result is... well, it's a cool concept. The simple fact is, baseball is a tough game to translate into a video game even as a straight simulator, much less if you're trying to tweak aspects of the game to make it more like NBA Jam. So you'd use the trackball to throw pitches, and this would have actually been kinda cool. Spinning the trackball to add some crazy spin to your pitches is a really neat idea, and the faster you spin it, the harder you throw the pitch. Well, that all makes sense. Unfortunately, that's about the only cool use of the trackball in the entire game. You would have also had to use the trackball for fielding, and then you've got a set of buttons for each base that you can use to tell the fielder where you want to try to throw the ball if it's hit in play. Batting also makes use of the trackball. You'd have to hold down the second base button and spin the trackball if you want to swing high, or hold down the home plate button and spin if you want to swing low. And again, your swing velocity is determined by how hard you spin the trackball. There's also some different combinations you can do to try to make some really zany, goofy pitches like a tornado pitch. There's also a power-up button, which is similar to the turbo button in NBA Jam, and it has its own power meter as well.
The pitch. Batter up. He's heading for home. Ooh. He scores. He scores. Here's the pitch. The bottom of the second. Batter up. A hard shot down the line. Batter up.
Yeah, I'm gonna be totally honest here. I'm very much okay with the fact that this got canceled. To be fair, I don't even have a working trackball, so I was trying to figure out a way to make this work with a traditional controller, and there's just really no good way to do it. But even if I had one, I don't think this game would be any better. The graphics are just okay. This was still using 2D graphics and I think a bit of Mode 7 wizardry to give you a 3D feel when you're smacking the ball around the field, but like I mentioned before, baseball is a tough game to translate into a video game anyway. With some more tweaking, this might have been a cool concept on the home console. I mean, we eventually got MLB Slugfest, so it was definitely a concept that could have worked. Interviews with some of the programmers were posted on the Video Game History Foundation website, and they basically admitted the game needed a lot more work. They mentioned how the trackball was a cool idea, but even on the test cabinets, those things were taking a massive beating. Everyone was just trying to spin those things as hard as they could so they could throw the fastest pitch or swing the bat the hardest. They also talked about the profitability of the game as an arcade cabinet. This is one side of arcade games most people probably don't think about, but here's the bare bones truth. These games are designed to make money. The arcade owner buys the cabinet, puts the game on display, and then kids come in and plunk down their quarters. NBA Jam was a massively profitable arcade game. At any given time, you probably had 2 players pumping the game full of quarters, and the timing was easy. Each game was broken down into quarters, which have a set amount of time, so you know roughly how many quarters the game can take in during a busy hour. This just wasn't the case with MLB Power Up Baseball. Instead of timed quarters, baseball games are broken down into 9 innings. You can buy innings to play by inserting quarters, but even still, you never know how long an inning might last. If one player is knocking the ball around the field nonstop, it could take 10 minutes just to get 3 outs and move on to the next half inning. So the profitability just really wasn't consistent enough to justify its existence in a massive arcade rollout. Not to mention the fact that the controls were overly complicated and borderline unapproachable. An arcade game really should be easy for anyone to get the gist of after a few minutes of playing, and that's just not really the case with MLB Power Up Baseball. So I'll just say this, even though the game itself probably didn't turn out the way the programmers would have wanted, it is really cool to see what they had in mind and see this as an unfinished prototype. And who knows, maybe with some more time this could have evolved into something that would have been very memorable. Maybe. But even though it didn't, my hat's off to the Video Game History Foundation for making it possible for us to get these rare glimpses into video game history that we otherwise may not have been able to see. For more information about this and other really neat stuff, such as the canceled NES version of SimCity, please check out the Video Game History Foundation's website, and I'll put a link to all of this in the description. As always, thank you for watching, please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.